Hi, Founder fans, Jason here, and today's founders are the Joy Brothers of Massachusetts. That's right, we have a technically four-parter today because we're talking about their father also. Now, I have begun to semi-affectionately call these boys the Joy Boys because, well, it's catchy and rhymes. It's a little insulting. They did their best, but let's talk about what happens with these brothers. First of all, John Joy, the father, was a resident of Massachusetts. The family had been longtime merchants outside of Boston, and they had a good amount of money. Now, John Joy, the father, during the 7 Years' War, aka the French and Indian War, well, he made a lot of money because he contracted with the British government to supply the soldiers in that war. About a decade later, when the revolution is about to break out and General Gage takes over Boston, well, John Joy also helps supply General Gage in his first suppressing of the people of Boston and then the war that essentially breaks out. Now, when 1776 comes around and Boston is evacuated by the British Army, many Loyalists also wisely evacuate, and among them is John Joy. He leaves, and he brings with him his whole family, and he has many children, but there are three notable sons that go with him. Now, these sons, they obviously aren't patriots because they do choose to leave, despite all of them being either 19 years old or older, though we can sympathize a bit with them, seeing as their father was a wealthy merchant who was being forced to leave, and just because you might agree with what the Patriots are saying doesn't necessarily mean you want to split up your family. You know, it was a civil war in every sense of the term, but that doesn't mean people are just going to bail on their loved ones like that. So the Joy Boys do go over to London until the Revolutionary War is over. Now, after this, that's when some of them get involved. First, we're going to talk about John Joy Jr., which is a fantastic name, the namesake of the father. He ends up, right after the war ends, returns to the United States. He moves to Boston. Now, he's an apothecary, which is essentially a pharmacist, as we would think of it today. He has a nice little business. He makes a good amount of money, gets a nice 2.5-acre property, and just goes about his life. Now, he doesn't have a gigantic effect. In fact, of the brothers we're talking about today, he probably has the smallest effect on American history, though Joy Street in Boston is named in his honor. Now, the next brother in line is Benjamin Joy. Arguably the brother who attempted to do the most, though again, as we will see, not very successfully. You see, Benjamin Joy also returns to Massachusetts after the war, and Benjamin is the one who really takes up the family business as a merchant, trying to revive his father's business. Now, at the time, they are importing from all over the world, and there's a lot of opportunity to import from all over the world for each different colony, each different city, and Benjamin Joy starts importing from India. In fact, he actually travels to India on several occasions to secure these contracts. He is in India in the early 1790s in Calcutta when President George Washington selects him as the first consul to Calcutta. Now, a consul is not an ambassador. He can't make treaties, but he is the representative of the American people who happen to be living in that part of India at the time. Now, India, well before this and up through this point, wasn't actually run by the Indian people anymore. No, now it had been run by the British Tea Company, the East India Tea Company. Let me say that again. It's the East India Tea Company, which is a British company, and it is a private corporation that the nation of Britain had given a monopoly power over India. And not just when it came to tea, they actually were the government. This private company was the government of India. Sadly, for Benjamin Joy, that private company did not recognize him as an official envoy, despite the fact that the nation of Britain did recognize the United States as a country. At this point, the East India Company, which had lost a lot of money from the American Revolution, they decided India doesn't recognize you. Now, after about a year of trying to get recognized, Benjamin Joy does return to the United States and continues the family business from there. Now, while he doesn't get anything done, he is officially the first American charged with opening diplomatic relations with India, which now, hundreds of years later, we still have diplomatic relationships with India. Now the relationship actually exists, as opposed to Benjamin Joy, despite, again, Joy's best efforts. And that makes him essentially the most important Joy family member to the American founding. But he's not the most interesting. No, the most interesting is George Joy. Now, George Joy never returns to the United States, but he stays in London for the rest of his life and sees himself as a spokesman for the American people, a self-appointed ambassador, if you will, for America. Problem is, with being a self-appointed ambassador, you're not actually able to do anything. Now, Joy carries on a correspondence with not only the people, important leaders of London, but important leaders of North America, especially once the Democratic Republicans take over. He specifically contacts James Madison very frequently, and Jefferson has a back and forth with him to a lesser degree. Now, he does write to James Madison, and he irks Madison the wrong way. Madison actually spends about a decade ignoring his letters. Now, George Joy really thinks high of himself. He is right in the middle. He tries to resolve the issues that lead to the War of 1812. To be fair, he does try his best to bring these two nations together because he did see a special relationship between the two nations, as it would come to be known a century later. That being said, people quickly realized, the British slowly realized and the Americans slowly realized, I should say slowly realized, they all slowly realized that, well, the Americans see George Joy saying, I know all these British dudes. And the British see him saying, I know all these American dudes. And they slowly come to realize he doesn't really know any of these people, and he doesn't carry any sway. Yeah, he's writing them letters, and they were gentlemen who were very polite to write back. Because I will note, the Joy family, even when they moved to London, still maintained a good amount of wealth. So they were able to be gentlemen and gentle persons and correspond with this family, these families. But just because you're writing letters back and forth doesn't mean you are officially able to get anything done. And therefore, despite what he thought of himself, George Joy was able to get very little accomplished. And by very little, I mean absolutely nothing. So he is a bigger personality than his brother Benjamin, but his brother Benjamin was a consul to India. Also didn't get anything done, and George Joy was not. So the Joy family, the Joy boys, as again I've come to call them, they did seem to have the best of intentions, though they just never really got to help much in the founding itself. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a little bit sillier than some of the videos I do, but I stumbled onto this family. I was writing an article and I said, I got to talk about these guys. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, definitely hit like. And if you're new here, subscribe, because I talk about the American Revolution all week long. Usually it's about more important founders, although most of those important founders are little known names. So come with me, join me talking about the unheralded American founders and the founders that gave it their best shot and did not succeed. So thank you so much. I'll be back with another founder for you, just one, tomorrow.